Hi guys, how's everyone doing? Just here for the Much for Our Lives gathering here in Mineola. So just want to say thank you for watching.
Which is natural, so we have our banner and we're going to be moving to the front and everybody else can join us behind. We're going to be on this side of the road and we're going to be going to the legislature with even more people. Woo! You guys ready? All right. No more silence and gun violence. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No more silence and gun violence. 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 Shut it down!
do more. We have waters, we have masks for you guys. We are prepared. Over there. Woo! Not one more. 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 And I thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. I am a Baldwin resident, and I've been fighting for gun violence since 2018. Yeah. So, like I said, there's merchandise over there in the tent, so if you guys want to get t-shirts, pins, we have flyers, we have all of the above, grab over there. And we want to start off with a land recognition because obviously this land was belonged to the Native Americans. In recognition of the original landowners and operators, we'd like to acknowledge that we will be on the Munsee-Lenape territories. Thank you.
We invite all of them. All right. Thank you, Nicolette, and hello, everyone. I'm Sabrina Guo. I am a student from Syosset High School and one of the organizers for today's rally. We are gathered here today in the wake of unthinkable tragedies. Most recently, in Uvalde and Buffalo, gun violence has continued to ravage communities in America. Today, we take a stand to fight for our lives and our future, marching and rallying together in the streets to demand that more lawmakers set aside their differences and come together to save lives, whatever it takes. Now, before we start our program, to remember the 21 victims in the Robb Elementary School shooting and all the lives lost to gun violence, Your Pride International artists created these artworks you see displayed here today to call for justice and action from all Americans to fight for our lives and for our future generations. Now, let's all please take a moment of silence to remember these innocent and lost lives to gun violence. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me in the back?
Yes.
Perfect. No.
Get the megaphone in the mic. Get to the mic.
I will try to project, but I kind of lost my voice. Can you guys hear me?
Yes!
Woo! I will be yelling. My voice might be cracking, but it's because I can. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been advocating for gun safety for 4 years. The first time I stood up to speak before a crowd was for gun safety, and it was in front of this woman, Linda Beagle-Showman. It was so inspiring to me to see young people being taken seriously, to see young people on the top of the podium at the Washington Monument telling people that we don't want to die anymore, that telling people that we don't want school shootings. I'm trying to be loud, I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Over there, actually. You only need one.
All right, this is the best we can do, but I know you guys are supportive, so that matters. And since then, I've taken research classes. I have done countless work learning about gun violence, and every single time I went to research, the answer was always the same. We have answers. We have solutions. person die. We do not need more guns. Two of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history had armed resource officers, Parkland and Uvalde. And we're damn sure shouldn't expect teachers to be on the front lines either. Teachers should not be armed. Can I hear you guys? Anything that's not action sends the message we condone this. And the gun laws that are on the table are bipartisan. We are not asking for you to abolish the Second Amendment. We are just asking for universal background checks. And it's just an extra set of precaution for deadly weapons, which require responsibility. And this narrative that is made up by lobbyists who are currently going bankrupt for their corruption are still spreading the ideas that we want to take away guns. No, we want to take away a gun from an unfit person and stop them from trying to shoot up a supermarket, from shooting up a school of children. And how can you be aggressively pro-gun and still the party of life? At least be consistent. And it's just painful to see so many people really fighting, and we still haven't made it, but we need to stand strong. They want us to be exhausted. They want us to be tired. They want us to divide ourselves, but we will not do that. Today we are standing united. Can I hear you guys? And it wasn't even a thought to not do this protest. After I saw that press conference with the Uvalde Police Department, I was disgusted. It was a failure of the cataclysmic proportions. Okay, guys? There was 19 police officers outside of the building. Children, dying children were calling for the police. They were calling 911. One student literally took her phone of her dead teacher to call the police. They were outside. And they were outside with parents who heard the situation, and they were tasing and put one teacher in handcuffs. And that one parent who was in handcuffs, she got out of the handcuffs, ran over the fence, saved her two children, and did more for those kids than a lot of those police officers did there. Armed resource officers do not work, and I'm tired and scared of seeing a security guard at my Target, at my Stop and Shop, at all these stores. And honestly, guys, we just have to come together and show them that a majority of America does not believe these backwards views. In fact, the fact that all around the developed world, nobody has these same opinions. Nobody endorses the idea that there should be no gun legislation or control. Every other country, they have that. And the idea that it's just a mental health problem is wrong, because all over the world, there's mental health issues. But do they have the same crazy mass shootings as us? No! And in fact, 60% of gun deaths are due to suicide. How about that? All right, guys, we have a fantastic slate of speakers. I have been so excited to hear from everybody. And our second speaker today is the one I mentioned before, Linda Beagle-Shulman, and she's the mother of a Parkland hero, Scott Beagle, who saved his children, his students, as a teacher in Parkland. Give it up for her.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here on this very important day. I have a big voice, I'm not going to use that. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Linda Beagle-Shulman. 1,579 days ago, my son, Scott Beagle, was murdered in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School massacre in Parkland, Florida. Scott was shot 6 times within 3 seconds from 5 feet away. Incredibly, but all too true, at that time in Florida, like Texas and so many other states, an 18-year-old was considered mature enough to buy an AR-15 assault rifle, a weapon of war whose only purpose is to kill people, but not mature enough to purchase a beer. The United States Supreme Court is poised to overturn a New York gun safety law regarding concealed carry. This law has been in effect for over 100 years. Yet, for the first time, the United States Supreme Court is positioned to find this law unconstitutional. It is important for everyone here, along with any other community that has experienced gun violence, to understand that you are also victims of gun violence. Let me say it again. We are all victims of gun violence. You have to learn to accept that. All too often, only those whose lives were ended by gun violence are considered to be victims. The rest of us, the wounded, the family members, the friends, the co-workers, are incorrectly labeled survivors. No one survives the effects of gun violence. Gun violence has a profound effect on the entire community, not only those who were senselessly murdered. Woo! Right! We are all victims. We survived physically, but we are still victims. Look at me. No bullet pierced my body. I have no physical scars. I was not rushed into surgery or had to do physical therapy for months on end. However, the emotional and psychological scars that I have are just as real, just as painful, and will continue for the rest of my life. I am asking you, I am begging you, turn your grief, turn your pain, and turn your anger into activism. We must end gun violence through both education and legislation. Through education, the Scott J. Beagle Memorial Fund sends at-risk, underserved children touched by gun violence to summer sleepaway camp. Our goal is to show these impressionable and vulnerable young children that there are positive alternatives to guns and gangs and keep them out of the justice system. We need to start when these children are young. We don't want to continue to rehabilitate. We want to start when they are young and get them on the right path.
Yes!
I believe in gun safety, not gun control. Words matter. We must fight for the enactment of the most basic gun safety laws, like the laws we have enacted here in New York. We must pass legislation on a federal level. This legislation should include universal background checks, red flag laws, the banning of bump stocks, safe storage, and the banning of ghost guns. This is plain and simple common sense. We are literally in the fight for our lives. The root causes of gun violence are many. They include white supremacism, mental illness, and poverty, just for starters. But there's one common thread running through all of these causes of gun violence in our country: the easy access to guns. A white supremacist hell-bent on evil cannot undertake a mass shooting without easy access to an AR-style weapon. Everyone has the right to be safe, and everyone has the right to live without fear. No one should have to think about where they will hide if someone with a gun starts shooting. You should feel safe in a school, a supermarket, a house of worship, a movie theater, at a concert, at a mall, without the need of looking over your shoulder. June is Gun Violence Awareness Month. It is outrageous that we have to designate a day for gun violence awareness, let alone an entire month. But we do. Look where we are. Yes! We must keep up the fight to make our streets, homes, schools, places of worship, and businesses safe from gun violence. I was asked recently about the lone gunman. who walked into a school in Texas and took the lives of 19 innocent children who had not yet experienced all their joys of life, along with 2 teachers that sacrificed their lives to protect those students. I stated then, and I will restate again, there is no such thing as a lone gunman. The gunman, or known today as the active shooter, is the one who pulled the trigger. But as far as I'm concerned, the active shooter had help, assistance, and encouragement from the NRA and so many more. The NRA and their Republican sycophants continue to oppose basic gun safety measures such as universal background checks and red flag laws, which we all know saves lives. This past Wednesday, the House of Representatives...
Vote them out! 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 Vote them out!
That's right, you guys. Before you cast a vote, you make sure that you know what that person who you're voting for stands for. And if they don't stand for gun safety, you don't vote for them. This past Wednesday, the House of Representatives passed H.R. 2377 and H.R. 3480. The NRA demanded that their flunkies vote no on both these bills. If they did, their vote, and I quote the NRA, will be considered in future candidate ratings and endorsements. So I ask you, is a rating and endorsement from the NRA more important than saving the innocent lives of children, teachers, moms, and dads? No! Is the rating and endorsement from the NRA more important than ending senseless and preventable gun violence?
No!
To the GOP, who have come to be known as the Guns Over People Party, it's very important. Hell no! The new legislation passed the House along party lines. Both bills had over 140 co-sponsors, none of whom were Republicans. They have well earned their title, Guns Over People.
Yes!
H.R. 2377 is the Federal Extreme Risk Protection Order Act of 2021. And H.R. 3480 is the Extreme Risk Protection Order Act, also of 2021. The NRA refers to these, common sense gun safety bills, and I quote again, gun control disguised as so-called red flag legislation. They are full of you-know-what. The active shooter had help and encouragement from the gun industry, who continue to sell guns that they know full well have only one purpose: to kill people. Clearly, the gun industry values profits more than they value human lives.
Yep.
The active shooter had help and encouragement from governors, lieutenant governors, state attorney generals, state legislatures, and the 50 United States senators as they continue failing to enact reasonable gun safety laws. Right now, 50 United States Republican senators are holding the entire country hostage by opposing reasonable gun safety legislation. Encouragement from the United States Supreme Court also, which seems to value guns over lives, ruling that almost every reasonable gun safety legislation violates the Second Amendment. Almost every member of the GOP chants the same mantra all the time, over and over. It violates the Second Amendment. When they cannot find a legitimate reason to oppose gun safety legislation, they cry out. It violates our Second Amendment rights, or it's the starter of a slippery slope to taking away your guns and your Second Amendment rights. The Second Amendment allows for well-regulated militia. A well-regulated militia does not kill children. A well-regulated militia does not kill people in supermarkets. A well-regulated militia does not kill people at work, in a hospital. As well as also a well-regulated militia does not allow for the killing based on the color of your skin or your religious belief. People claim many reasons for mass shootings: mental health, violent movies, violent video games. However, the one consistent factor in any mass shooting is what? The gun!
Yes.
In each of these mass shootings, the weapon of choice was an AR-15. My son was murdered with an AR-15. Take away the ability of this gun, and you significantly reduce mass shootings. Can any one of you imagine your mother or your wife not coming home from the supermarket like what happened in Buffalo?
No!
Or a family member not making it home from church or temple like what happened in Charleston and Pittsburgh?
No.
Or your child not coming home from school like what happened in Parkland and Texas?
No.
Well, I don't have to imagine it. I live it every day. I live with the pain, I live with the grief, and I live with the sadness every day. Last Monday, I was honored to join Governor Hochul as she signed 10 new reasonable gun safety laws. While New York has the most stringent gun safety laws in the country, loopholes had to be filled. Loopholes had to be filled to make the gun safety laws even stronger. These loopholes existed simply because the Republicans in Congress believe that the support of the NRA is more important than protecting and saving the lives of our children going to school, people shopping in the supermarket, Walmart, people going to houses of worship to pray, people going to movie theaters. Let's face it, people simply going about living their daily lives. Here are some of the bills that Governor Hochul signed last week. I dare any one of you to tell me that these are not reasonable gun safety laws. Legislation which bars the purchase of semi-automatic rifles by anyone under the age of 21. I ask you, reasonable or unreasonable? Legislation which prohibits the purchase of body armor with exceptions of those in specified professions. I ask you, reasonable or unreasonable?
Reasonable.
Legislation which expands the list of people who can file extreme risk protection orders and requires law enforcement to file those orders in under a certain amount of time in certain circumstances. Reasonable or unreasonable?
Reasonable.
Two more. Legislation to investigate the role of social media companies in promoting and facilitating violent extremism and domestic terrorism online. Reasonable or unreasonable?
Reasonable. And Fox News.
And legislation which requires micro-stamping. I ask you one last time, reasonable or unreasonable?
Reasonable.
We must see to it that these laws get passed federally. We will not stop speaking until this happens. This is common sense gun safety legislation that will save lives. We must commit ourselves to ending gun violence in our lifetime. We must commit ourselves to the passage of reasonable gun safety laws on a federal level. We must keep up the fight. We must speak out and make sure our voices are heard loud and clear. And we need to be taken seriously. I would like to share a few personal thoughts, and then I'll leave you. Some personal thoughts with those of you who've been touched by I'd like to share some personal thoughts, if you'll allow me, with those of you who have also been touched by gun violence. And I'm not sure there's anyone here who hasn't been. We are all entitled to our emotions, our feelings, our grief, our anger, our sadness. Our lives have been turned upside down and inside out. our lives will never be the same. And I said before, we are all victims of gun violence. The mother, father, spouse, sibling, child, aunt or uncle, nephew or niece, coworker, friend, acquaintance are all victims of gun violence. Gun violence affects an entire community. Does anybody really believe that Parkland, Uvalde, Buffalo, Santa Fe, El Paso, or all of the other communities where a mass shooting has occurred will ever be the same? I can tell you no. Way too many times I've been asked, when do you think you'll get over it? When do you think you'll get past it? They want to know when the sense of loss will go away. You never get past it, and you never get over it. Up there, I don't know if you can see, Mike, maybe you can raise it. This is a picture of my son, Scott. That I will cherish forever. This is a picture of my son Scott being shot, which I will never forget. Some days I find more difficult than others. Scott's birthday, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and holidays. For me, the hardest days is February 14th, the day of the shooting in Parkland, Valentine's Day. You see, February 14th is the day my son was murdered, and February 14th is also the day my daughter Melissa was born. As you can imagine, one of the happiest days of my life, and now the absolute worst day in my life. It has been 1,579 days since Scott's murder, and I've had to learn to live with the loss and the grief I feel each day. My son, my loved one, was murdered senselessly due to gun violence. For those of you in my club, I'm sorry you're there. The club that no one ever asked to become a member. You'll know when you rounded the corner and begun your journey for recovery and healing, when you're alone in your thoughts and the thought of your loved one pops into your head, instead of the tears welling up in your eyes, you find that you have a smile on your face. Today I love talking about my son. I love hearing stories, getting texts, getting photos, having people call with a memory, anything that they want to share. It's a very long journey to healing and learning to live with the devastating loss of a loved one. Yet we have choices, and my choice has become my mission, and I'd like you to go on it with me. My mission is to do something that will rid our society of senseless gun violence and make sure that no other mother, father, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, friend, or co-worker ever joins my son. My club. I don't want you to join my son either. Let's work together to put a sign on my club door that reads, "Membership closed, no more admittance." Please join me on my mission. I know together we can make a difference. I know together we can get this done.
Thank you again, Nicolette. Everywhere we look, gun violence is destroying our families and towns. Whether it's mass shootings in malls, grocery stores, concerts, schools, or places of worship, gun violence in neighborhoods burdened by legacies of economic ruin, racism, and poverty, or the ever-increasing suicides taking place around the country, gun violence in the U.S. adds up. Over 100 Americans die from it every day. I repeat, that is more than 100 lives lost every single day. What is being done? How is meaningful change being implemented rather than superficial Band-Aid solutions that ignore the core issues at hand? I say, no more school shooting drills. No more burning loved ones.
Yes.
No more living in constant fear of a notoriously American problem. Can you hear me?
No more!
For years, our government has mostly failed to make significant changes to our gun laws, and hundreds of thousands of Americans have died because of it. Over the last year alone, 41,000 lives were taken by gun violence in America, the highest since 1981. Just 13 days after Uvalde, there has been 33 mass shootings in the U.S. 33. Rates of firearm death are rising among children and teens, with firearms now a leading cause of death among youth and the most common cause of death for young men.
Not one more!
Not one more! Not one more! Not one more! Not one more! All stakeholders need to listen to what our communities are telling us. We want and need to be safe. Is that too much to ask? We must take actions grounded in the perspectives of survivors of gun violence and their families, and create legislation supported by robust policy analysis and unbiased bipartisan conversations. It is imperative that we acknowledge the many underlying forces that fuel gun violence: gun glorification, political apathy, poverty, armed supremacy, in our country's mental health crisis. In addition to wide-scale legal action, we must call for a robust investment in the things that communities around the country need in order to live in safety, including programs that reduce community-oriented violence, suicide, domestic violence, and programs in support of mental and behavioral health. Violence is a complex and nuanced issue, but it is clear that U.S. violence is perpetuated by poverty, marginalization, exclusion, prejudice, and romanticization of guns in American society. We need more leaders who are willing to question this and take bold steps to address our national gun violence epidemic. Days ago, New York's governor signed into legislation a sweeping 10-bill package that includes raising the age for purchase of semi-automatic weapons to 21 years old, as well as closing gun law loopholes and strengthening our red flag law preventing gun sales to citizens at risk of self or communal harm. This is a very good step in the right direction, but it is long overdue. The current state of gun violence in the U.S. cannot be further tolerated. Can you hear me? It cannot be further tolerated.
No more!
But when will we be free and liberated from the fear of being gunned down in places which should be safe havens, like our schools and supermarkets? Young people have been mostly excluded, marginalized, and silenced from these conversations for far too long. We are now standing up and pushing for an intergenerational perspective and approach. Communities can and should be leading the charge in combating this epidemic, but it takes courage, transparency, and sacrifice for things to change. I am proud to be here today amongst all of you as we collectively make this commitment to work together and across all boundaries to keep our youth safe from harm, so our children and our neighbors' children don't have to do these rallies years from now. Can you hear me? Thank you all for coming, and let's make sure our voices not only are heard, but matter.
Thank you, Sabrina, Nicolette, Shelley, and March for Our Lives for demanding lawmakers do more to save our lives. It is an honor for me to speak here today. I am standing in front of you because I am disgusted by seeing innocent lives taken away, innocent lives of children. As a mother of 6 children, I should have the confidence that each and every day my children will be safe. I should not have to worry about my children receiving an education. I should not be forced to question the safety of my children in school. However, I do. How can I not? As of right now, in 2022, 27 school shootings have already taken place. These shootings have resulted in 56 people being injured, 27 people being murdered, and that's just in the last 5 months. 83 different families had to deal with the fact that their loved ones were victims of gun violence. And this is not just at school. Shootings have become an unfortunate constant in our country. Just this year alone, there have been 246 mass shootings. Every single day, more than 500 people die from gun violence.
Not one more!
Not one more! Not one more!
Not one more!
The statistics are endless. The numbers are slowly becoming infinite. But these are not just numbers. These are lives. These are our lives. All Americans from all different communities and cultures must stand united together to protect our children, to protect our country from tragedies caused by gun violence. I know that each and every one of us standing here today feel the same way as I do. We feel scared for our future, angry at our present, and ready to create change so our past isn't repeated. Our youth will lead the way. Gun violence directly interferes with our basic human right, the right to live. I ask every single one of you to go to the NRA website. Any elected official that has a positive rating from the NRA website or has ever had a positive rating from the NRA website, we should not support them. We need to vote them out!
Vote them out!
Thank you.
Vote them out! Vote them out!
Hi, my name is Robert Gaffar, and I'm from Rockville Center. I'm a survivor of the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history, so that occurred in Las Vegas on October 1st, 2017. There are things from that night I will never forget. I had spent most of that month traveling to music festivals for work. This was finally our last event. As you can imagine, my wife was looking forward to me coming home to help with our kids. I wasn't looking forward to changing diapers, but I couldn't wait to see them. As we were getting ready to leave, we heard a couple of pops that sounded like fireworks. The performance continued, so I didn't think anything of it. My hope for fireworks soon faded. I realized the sounds were gunfire and quickly found shelter. As I started to hear the ping noise of bullets hitting metal around me, I'll never forget a strange pressure on my body. It was the shock wave of bullets passing right over me. I'll never forget the eerie silence of 20,000 people during the gunfire. Their horrific screams of grown women and men in between each reload. The look of fear on the faces of the police officers as I ran out of the exit. And I will never forget the sound of that weapon. It's worse than you can ever imagine, especially when it's being fired at you. The sheer amount of firepower unleashed by a bump stock AR-15 should only be seen in a war zone and never in an American city. Over 1,000 bullets fired, murdering 60 innocent souls, and wounding more than 500 people. This happened in 10 minutes by one person. Loud noises and pops still startle me, but every day does get better. When you experience gun violence, it makes you see the world differently. I don't want to live in a country where mass shootings are as American as apple pie, where guns are worshipped as idols, and the protection of life is secondary. It's as if we're becoming one nation under gun. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. This is an American issue about public safety. I'm angered by the lack of leadership and courage to prevent gun violence. It's stealing over 110 lives in our communities every day. That's almost 2 Las Vegas massacres every single day. The solutions may be obvious, but it doesn't mean it will be easy. The opposition will be ruthless, immoral, and unrelenting. But I'm reminded of what Dr. King once said, we shall overcome.
Yes!
And we will overcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What an awesome experience it is to be standing here in front of all of you and standing alongside these brave people who have put this event here together. Let's give a big round of applause for these incredible people. It is very hard for me to be able to add or add on to any of the words that have already been said here today. They've been powerful messages and powerful stories that we have all, unfortunately, have lived through with all of them. So for me to come to you right now, I have 2 basic messages. One of them comes to you as a leader. The fact that we as New York State United Teachers, which represents teachers, higher ed, custodians, paraprofessionals, security, secretaries, all across the state, I can assure you that 650,000 people are standing alongside of you right now. All of you, 650,000 across the state of New York. And also also, as a vice president of the American Federation of Teachers, I can also assure you that you are also standing alongside 1.7 million members across the entire country who all share the same vision that you share along right here today. Common sense gun reform is needed. We all know that. We've heard that here today, and it needs to happen. Thank you.
We provide services to women across Long Island who have been both impacted by gun violence and many of them who need help and reform. We work within the jails with people who have committed crimes. And what we teach is that no violence is good violence. We have recidivism rates that are 2% because they get the services they need. What we know is that people behind bars are people of color. They are marginalized. They are people who need mental health and didn't receive it when needed. We also know that white supremacy in this country has continued to engage the violence that we see across Long Island and across our state and across our country. I brought my 10-year-old son to school the morning after the shooting and thought, will I see him today when I pick him up? This is what every parent is thinking every single day. This must end, and it must begin with us. We must call out white supremacy. We must remember that people like myself, a Latinx person, the people across this country, the people on Long Island that you look around here, we don't stand for white supremacy. We are here to call out the NRA, and we are here to ban assault weapons now. We stand in support of all survivors. And who you don't see among the hundreds gathered here today is Fox News. We don't see the media here, and yet we are the voices, and we will make a difference today. We are stronger together, and we are going to fight to ensure that our children are safe, and the students you see here gathered us, adults, today. Shout out to the students who are changing the world.
Lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Repeat, lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Everyone gathers into a corner of a room and waits. We are told this time, as we have been every time, what to do if a shooter comes into our school. Every day in this country, this is a reality for millions of students. We have been told to shove ourselves into closets, grab textbooks for protection against bullets, and crouch on bathroom toilets. Why? Why do we do these drills? Well, it's because we have to constantly live and learn while fearing guns and fearing our lives. Because in America, more than 3,500 children and teens are shot and killed in school, and more than 15,000 are shot and injured. For more than 3 million kids every year, these lockdown drills become real, whether it be due to a threat, due to some exposure of some kind of gun violence, or a shooting. Which leaves me wondering, am I next? Are my friends next? Are we next? My name is Pradeeksha Malayo. I'm a student, a junior at Hicksville High School. Today, as I gather with you all, I think back to when I first started doing these lockdown drills. Even as a kindergartner, I was doing these drills. Staff did their best to explain the circumstances to groups of 4-year-old to 11-year-old children. From our childhood, we were introduced to the fact that we could be shot and killed at any moment, and bad people could enter our school to do just that. I was in 2nd grade when the Sandy Hook shooting happened. I'm about to go into 12th grade, and just a few weeks ago, on June 2nd, 2022, 19 students and 2 teachers were murdered and lost lost their precious lives in Robb Elementary School, Uvalde, Texas. It's been almost 10 years since Sandy Hook, more than 23 years after Columbine, just 4 years after Parkland. This is a recurring theme in America, so I will ask, as many of my friends have asked today, and many have asked around the country in marches just like this, what are we going to do to our legislators, our congresspeople?
Vote them out!
To our legislators, our congresspeople, our senators, our mayors, our supervisors, executives, presidents, vice presidents, politicians, and leaders, we are tired of the continuous thoughts and prayers. They sound nice on paper and make you look good, but thoughts and prayers only go so far.
Yes!
Our friends and family, people like us, are being killed in their schools, supermarkets, places of worship, in their home, and we are tired of it. We are tired of feeling unsafe in places we are supposed to be safe. We deserve more than this. Students deserve more than seeing people who are like us being killed in schools like ours. Staff deserve more than having to come into work every day not knowing if they have to risk their lives. We, as a collective, as a people of this country, deserve more because we are tired of our lives and the lives of those close to us being treated like a second priority. We are exhausted. We are exhausted from hearing jumbles of words without intent and meaning.
Yes.
We deserve more than shallow efforts by politicians to make themselves look good and get ahead. We deserve action, and we deserve action now. Today, as people march around the country, we show those in leadership that we will not be complacent. We will not be silent. These are our voices, our lives, and our America. Leadership works for us, not the other way around. We hold the future in our hands, and with the actions we take and the people we choose to represent us. We show people that we are not alone in our desire to be free from the fear that consumes us, and we are ready to reach out collectively, and we will make a change, all of us together.
Yes.
This is not about politics or controversy, and the motive behind our march shouldn't be twisted by those who want to corrupt our message and spread theirs. We want less stigma behind mental health. We want easier access to resources. Most of all, we want comprehensive gun legislation and for the proper protections to be put in place. That is all we want: protection, guaranteed safety, and justice. And to be clear, we want more than an acknowledgement. We want to see not our voices being heard, but our voices being used in action to propel change. So, I want to finish off by encouraging everyone to reach out to their local legislators and to gather in groups to foster collective changes like we are today. I would like to thank all of the organizers of this event for inviting me to speak, and I want to leave by saying, enough is enough. We have to stop gun violence now. Remember, this is not a moment in time, but a movement. Our movement. Our movement. Thank you so much, and have a great day.